So under that category of how to be the CEO of you, you talk about the benefits of being treated unfairly. Again, one of those things doesn't seem to go with the other. So when you talk about the benefits of being treated unfairly, what do you mean?
Yes. So one of the things that we seek when we are trying to get success, when we're trying to achieve something that we've set out to achieve, is that we seek fairness, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reality is we don't always get fairness. It makes it easier, but it's not a guarantee. And so in our work of being the CEO of you, we talk about some fundamental principles of empowerment. Those fundamental principles being personal responsibility and personal accountability. So I break down the word fair into an acronym that I call FAIR, and that is finding accountability in responding to the situation. So regardless of the fairness of the situation, I'm simply saying you've got to find accountability in responding to whatever has been thrown your way. Don't focus on it wasn't fair, because that suspends you in a state of non-response.
And victimhood.
And victimhood. There you go. That's the word that I was walking you to.
Okay, and I'm right there with you. So how do you make that fear before you get to things being fair? How do you make that your ally?
So now I didn't make up this acronym of fear. I think I don't remember where it came from. I just remember hearing it when I was 27 years old or 25 years old or whatever, and that is the acronym of false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
I've always liked it. It just worked for me. I'm thinking, wow. And so what that simply says is when I have that fear, I've got to look for some more data, some more information. It's the fear of a difference. It's the fear of something's not going to work. It's the fear of not understanding this stranger approaching me and all of those things. So if I can, in that moment of fear, remember false evidence appearing real. Let me look for the truth of this situation. Maybe that means I've got to humble myself to this person and get more data on their come from. Maybe it means I've got to, as I'm preparing for this interview, I've got to stop looking at the person who's going to interview me as trying to break me down and realize, why would they spend all day interviewing a whole lot of people that they're trying to break down? That's not their objective. Their objective is to interview a lot of people where they're trying to find the one who best fits their needs. So the reality of the evidence in that situation is I've now got to walk in there not with the fear that they're trying to break me down, but with the reality that they're trying to see if I best fit their needs.
It changes the conversation entirely, I would imagine, when you approach it.
Absolutely, because it changes my mindset, which changes my behaviors, which changes how I'm going to respond to this situation.
And when you free your mind, as the saying goes, other things will follow.
You know what else will follow? We'll just call it success, though. We'll just call it success.
Okay. You're talking, really, when you're talking about looking at fear as a signpost that leads you ultimately to fairness, you're really talking about empowering people. And of course, that's your web address, empowered.inclusion.com. And we talk about empowerment, but why do so many leaders sometimes seem hesitant or afraid to give that to their employees?
It's because of a misunderstanding of the word empowerment. We've typically looked at empowerment as a delegation of authority, which means simply, in the mindsets of most people, if I tell my people that they're empowered, they're going to want to go off and do what they want to do. And we, from our innovations approach, we simply say empowerment is really, it's very much in line with your ability to do the job. It's your ability to perform at a certain level. So without that ability, without those skills necessary to do what it is you're supposed to do, I'm not even going to delegate that authority to you. And so most of the times when we see in an environment where people are not feeling empowered and are not empowered, because it's really not about a feeling, it's really about, am I empowered? Do I have the capacity to perform? When we see an environment where that's not really embraced, it's because there's some mistrust of people's ability to do the job, some mistrust in their competency. And so we focus with leadership on saying, let's start right there with building people's competencies to the level of at least to your expectation and preferably beyond. That's part of building an empowered environment. And another piece of that is managing through those differences that are going to come up, because it's easier for me to do that with someone who I'm comfortable with because our differences have there's a lot of similarities in the midst of our differences that make us comfortable with each other. It's a little bit more difficult for me to do that when I have some tension with you because of some diversity. So once again, we see that diversity and empowerment become inseparable to creating this high-performance culture.
And I would imagine you're also relieving a lot of the burden off of the person at the top who feels they personally have to keep all the balls, juggling all the balls and keeping them in the air.
Absolutely. I always give the analogy, if I'm leading a team of 12, let's say, I want to be able to go on vacation and not worry about the house. Mm-hmm. Because I've left back there 10 highly competent, highly skilled, highly empowered individuals that if a phone call comes in, no one's going to say, oh, my goodness, Darrell's not here, I don't know what to do. They're going to simply say, oh, yes, we've talked about that as a team. We've covered that. Even though Darrell was the point person for it, I also know what's going on with it, and I can help you with that.
And now you're talking about systems.
Exactly.
Exactly. Do you find with a lot of your clients they think they have a system that works, but when you come in, you really have to kind of help them rebuild and restructure what they think is already working?
Yes, when it comes to a work environment of empowerment and inclusion, absolutely. That we see that challenge, and it's really easy to show our clients that they don't have an environment of accountability. They may have an environment of blame, but not an environment of accountability. And there's a difference there, right? Yeah. We see a lot of environments of blame where if something goes wrong, everyone's pointing fingers. But an environment of accountability says, let me focus on the three that are pointing back at me.
Ah, okay. Very nice. Because ultimately we all want to be successful. I don't know, I've never met anyone who just says, I want to be a failure in life. That's my goal, just to mess everything up. So, what gets in the way? We know we want it, but for some reason we just can't get there. What gets in a person's way of doing their best?
Those two words we talked about, fear and fair. Mm-hmm. Big barriers to success, and so we overcome them with false evidence appearing real and finding accountability and responding to the situation, and our challenge around responding to that diversity tension. The tension that can become productive if we don't ignore the pink elephant in the room. There you go. Exactly. Get that pink elephant on the team.
So, Darrell, how early is too early to start working on having people have that broader view and not be so narrow in their focus? I know you're really big on starting them out as young as possible.
Yes.
Speak about
that.
Well,
I've been trying to figure out how early is too early because I have a 7-year-old who I remember when she was 3 and explaining that the toy broke because of something. And I remember telling her, I can't wait until I can take you through my empowerment class. Right? Now, at the age of 7, I'm just about to sign her up, but she's not quite ready yet.
Okay. Well, I suggest you do it before she gets about 15 or 16, because then she's right to have a problem.
Right. So it's definitely going to be before she's 10. No, I say that jokingly, but to say that, I have the pleasure of doing a lot around mentoring, and I'm of course I'm mentoring my own 7-year-old and my own 2.5-year-old now, but I've also mentored preteens and teenagers. And especially at that age, that preteen, the teenager age, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to instill these principles of responsibility and accountability for success, of managing through differences and responding more effectively through differences, so that they don't have to get reconditioned like so many of us have to do now in our adult life when some consultant like me comes through the organization and you're sitting at the age of 30, 35, 40, maybe even 50, 55, and saying, wait a minute, I wish someone would have given me this when I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
I would have shown up a lot differently throughout high school, throughout college. My grades would have looked better.
Mm-hmm.
My relationships would have looked better. My relationships with my parents would have looked better. So really, the mentoring piece is trying to instill these concepts at that early age so that I'm not needed when they get into the workplace.
Mm. And you started, you walk your talk. You were proactive in this area even when you were in junior high. So your why for doing this started a long time ago, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It did. We all have labels, and it's just my labels never quite fit into a nice little box. At least not the boxes that I lived in. And I grew up in a predominantly black, low-income environment in St. Louis, Missouri, and I left that environment when I was, I think, in third grade to go into a predominantly white neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Now, I would go back to the old neighborhood on the weekends because that's where my grandmother lived. Mm-hmm. But one of the challenges that I saw in that new environment was I wanted to hold on to my identity but still succeed in this new environment. And that's kind of the same thing I've always carried myself. I remember when I was in graduate school and I was telling people saying, well, Darrell, why do you keep talking? Why did you have the conversation with the dean about race relationships? Why did you have a speech during a scholarship dinner about race relationships? I said, because I want us all to be able to walk into corporate America or any work environment setting that we're going into and be able to hold on to those differences that will make a difference. Just like I've tried to hold on to from that third grade experience when the first thing that they did for me at that moment was they said, you and the other two black kids in this school are going to go to speech class. You know what speech class was? They pulled us out of our regular classroom, took us to the back of the library, and taught us how to speak properly. Now, my challenge at that point, my third grade, I can't remember how old I am, but at that point, I'm thinking, all the people that I've been talking to up to this point in my life know what I've been saying.
Okay.
All you new folks all of a sudden don't know what I'm saying. Is the problem me or is the problem you?
Okay. And so even at the age of, 8 or 9, you were already being groomed to do the work that you do with Butler Consulting Group, BC
Absolutely.
Innovations.
Absolutely. So that tension moment, I've taken that, made it productive. So even though I didn't quite like that speech class concept, what I did do was I took advantage of it, and I've used those tips and tools on speaking, quote unquote, in becoming a keynote speaker and the work that I do.
Excellent. And you're teaching people with everything that your company does to do the same thing. It's like you said, it's not about the tension, it's about how we respond to the tension. It's not about the differences, it's about how we respond to the differences. And that's what empowered inclusion is all about, and that is what Darrell Butler's work is definitely about. Darrell, if someone wants to get in touch with you, and we're going to tell them your website is empowered.inclusion.com, but they are listening to you and they say, we need you yesterday, how do they reach out to you?
You can reach me at the email address of infobci. That's infobci at bg-inc, short for incorporated.com. So that's the email address, or the phone number is 407-385-0784. It's 407-385-0784.
Excellent. So info, BCI, info Bravo Charlie Igloo at BG as in girl -inc.com, or 407-385-0784. Darrell, you have certainly opened our eyes, and, I totally get now how workplace tension can be productive, because it simply means let's not ignore the differences. Let's find a way to make them work for us so that the bottom line, whatever that is for your particular company or organization, is robust.
Absolutely.
Okay, Darrell Butler, thank you for being with us and for empowering us and including us in this very rich conversation. Darrell Butler, info BCI at BG-INC, Butler Consulting, BC Innovations. This is Annetta Wilson, speakwithEase.com, and you've been listening in on another one of our interviews with the experts. Have a great day.